Right. Make sure audio is all good. I shouldn't fill that up. Work for me today, that would be nice. Right, make sure my audio is working correctly. Yeah, no, my audio is okay. It's all good. I've been picked up at all by the stream. Do I need to speak up a little bit because I don't know if this will be picked up or not. Right, I think I'm being picked up fine. That is all good. Welcome to the chat, Arma. Obviously one of the followers from our guest driver for tonight. Welcome to the stream. Sorting some stuff out. Standings. There we go. So, good evening everyone, and welcome to the stream for round number 17, I believe, around the Hungarian Grand Prix. I believe I need to change the stream title because I believe that is also wrong. Video producer, that needs to be changed on the fly if I can change that. I can't change that properly. Indeed, that was not correct. There we go. Should have had that set differently, but oh well. So, with that little detail out of the way, we get back to where we were. While we wait for the drivers all to load into the session, we'll have a quick old look at the driver standings as we head into this round, as we head towards the last 5 or 6 rounds of the season. It is Vapid who leads the championship standings in the Williams on 179 points, with Scott in second, chasing down obviously his closest rival, 148.5 points. For Scott, third in place is Angelo, a little bit further back, 101.5 points, but he has the 2 Alpines for company, close behind of Tom Gorin on 93 and Kirby on 87.5. So no, Power is no longer in this league. His nearest to him is Checo. Obviously we know that Ansmas obviously is not around that much either in the league anymore. We have TMS Sora in the race tonight, who can obviously have a chance of overtaking Ansmas and potentially Checo with a good result. We've seen obviously Sora with a dominating victory last time out at the Mexican Grand Prix. I honestly could not say the name there for a second. So randomly he's also left the session. Cal is no longer a driver. Shotmail, obviously not the best race for him last week out either, so he's going to be looking for improvements here in Hungary, but it's going to be very interesting to see how the drivers obviously tackle a very different sort of circuit style to the likes of Mexico. Obviously the wall's been a lot closer. And obviously then looking at the standings themselves, so the constructor standings, it is Williams who still lead on 208 points. Obviously we know that it was a big shunt and a big mistake for, I believe it was So Fresh last week, leaving Vapid the only one to score the points for Williams last week. It was Alpine though with a good double points finish for both Tom Gorin and for Kirby. So both of them scoring points last week. Haas obviously a little bit just further behind them in third, 162.5 points, who are currently ahead of Aston Martin. Obviously we know Aston Martin only have the one driver now for the most part. It is Checo kind of bringing home the season for RFL solo. Mercedes in P5 obviously this week only represent, well, 2 drivers this week. We have TMS Sora and XR Senna representing those 2 this week. Obviously we know Senna had a good race with Checo last week and some good duels last week with the Mexican driver. Alfa Romeo R6, obviously we know that there are a couple of good drivers there. If one of them is capable of picking up good points if he does not have spins or incidences, but we know Shot Metal does have the pace to keep up in that aspect. Ferrari in 7th, obviously we know that's been a one-man team for most of the season. JDM not really been showing up all that much in the second Ferrari, with Andreas kind of carrying that team on 111.5 points. And then Red Bull, obviously, we know not done all that well either in 8th place. Obviously, we know that Fins, I believe, is the full-time driver in that team now, so he's going to have a lot of work to do, but Ferrari's not that far ahead for him to actually try and pull ahead and get back into 7th in the championship. And obviously, we know that AlphaTauri and McLaren have not moved in the standings. But tonight's race brings us to the race at, I believe it is Hungary, so I'm trying my best to find a thing of a pronunciation of this particular track. Sorry about that, I had someone in the room I was just talking to there. Hungarian Grand Prix, obviously 70 laps for the drivers if it was full race, but obviously only half of that, so it will be around 35 laps, 36 laps for the drivers to take on. I believe it's 35. The lobby obviously has indeed been readied up, so obviously a 14 corner circuit, but does require a lot of actual grip to go along with it, and a very high downforce setup will be required for the drivers. Not quite as much downforce probably as likes of Singapore and Monaco, but we will be requiring downforce, because obviously knowing that Hungary is very much Monaco, with really the barriers are still as close to the edge of the track as per what they are to the back of the circuits, well, the back of the sides of the circuit there for those 2. But as we now head into the session, we will see how this all goes for the drivers as we head into the qualifying for the 5-lap sprint circuit. Obviously, they need to see one different name in there. Oshalix, they're a guest driver, I believe, for this week only. Looking forward to see how they get on in the McLaren. Obviously, we know that McLaren don't have any drivers this week, so it is really a bit of a mountain to climb for them to actually bring home a good haul of points, but obviously we know we have a very small turnout this week. I wonder if we will see the same level of dominance from TMS Soda once again. Will depend potentially on the weather conditions, and which could throw a curveball into it. It looks like we have some rather grey conditions for qualifying. It looks like it is dry conditions at the moment. Yes, it is. So we'll see. We'll be first on the track to bring us a lap of this circuit, but as I say, a very different experience last week, as I think XR Senna might potentially be the first car to come out onto the track, so we'll go on board with XR Senna and see how he is actually going to get on. Obviously we know, I think someone maybe further as well is coming at the pit lane. XR Senna looks like he is indeed out of the pit lane. I think there is no other cars out on track at the moment, so it will be XR Senna who will be first on track, with Oshalix just behind. So we'll give it a little bit of coverage to him, see how he gets on, obviously in his fourth last lap as well. Obviously we know that track limits on this track are sometimes a little bit difficult to manage and can be very difficult to figure out, as I believe here you can have a little bit of an issue there, as I believe that he has decided to back off of the pace there. So we're going to go on board with the one-time McLaren driver for this week, see how he gets on. But it's going to be very interesting to see how his pace lies in comparison to everyone else within the league itself. Obviously we know he looks like he can come a little bit of chatting to him before this race. It looks like he was a little bit of a midfield driver, so he could fit himself into about that lower half of the top 10 potentially. So we know who the front runners are most likely going to be, but a track like this could throw up a few surprises. As we know, safety cars can be very easy with the barriers being very close. However, you've got to be careful not to underfuel too much potentially for the likelihood of safety cars, but it can happen. However, as we see the McLaren driver still heading around the track, you can see as we go on board just for a second just how close some of the walls can actually be to the edge of the track in comparison to Mexico last week, where it was completely the opposite. Obviously only the 11 drivers, but to take us around the lap as there is JDM retiring from the session. I believe he's obviously had an incident there. We'll have a look and can't actually see now what's exactly what happened, but no, that's not important right now. So, McLaren driver also takes us through a lap of the Hungarian Grand Prix circuits. We head down towards turn 1, DRS wide open, heading up towards 180 miles an hour, 190, just touching that, just over 193 miles an hour into turn number 1. DRS is going to be open obviously once again, the one of two DRS zones on this track, this one on the one on the main straight. So we now head into the very technical section of the track now. Place where you won't likely see you'll see a lot of drivers following, but not a lot of drivers making moves, because obviously a lot of these, if you can get close enough into this corner, you can potentially make moves in the race, but you do have to be right alongside and trust that the driver you're racing with is going to be able to leave you enough space. You do not want to touch that curb on the inside, as it will spin your car out as we head towards the right left. Very well executed there from the McLaren driver as we head through into the next sequence of corners. Traction there held quite well. I think it was a small mistake there as we now head into the middle sector. Was the middle sector time going to be for the McLaren driver? 55.1. I expect that probably to get beaten a little bit, but looking good at the moment for the McLaren driver. Very neat and tidy on this first lap, so let's see how he gets on as we come through into the final few corners. And it's going to be a good final corner here is required if you want to get a good run coming out of here. You do what you may well understand. If you do miss the apex there, DRS wide open, what is it going to be? It's going to be a 117.3 for him. Let's see, is Senna hasn't validated on his lap, so he's not going to be improving in that lap at the moment. Let's see, is Kirby's currently purple in the second sector at the moment, so let's see how the Alpine driver gets on as we now head towards the final corner. I believe that is Senna, obviously, who's been validated on his first lap, will have to go again unless he's got damage on that front wing and will have to go back into the pit lane. However, I believe indeed he has gone back into the pit lane, so where Kirby put himself at 117.3, it's a little bit slower than the McLaren driver at this moment in time. Shut Meadow's going to be next across the line, I believe. So we're going to see what time Shut Meadow can do across the line. 116.6 goes quicker by the McLaren driver by 0.6 of a second at the moment. Is currently the top time. Scott is on 117.3, probably going to go for yet another lap, as we're going to have, I believe it's going to be Vapid who's going to be the furthest next one along. Hang on, that could actually be Tom Gorin, who's a little bit further up the road. I believe it is. He's currently in the middle sector, so how does the Alpine driver get on? Purple sector for him. Quicker than Shut Meadow at the moment in the middle sector. I believe that is the McLaren driver just in front still, obviously probably most likely not on a lap again, probably going into the pit lane. Yes, he does, so no distractions there for the Alpine driver. As we head into the final corner, Tom Gorin's going to be seeing what he can do as he comes across the finish line. It's going to be a 116.8, goes just marginally slower than Shot Middle by 0.2 of a second, so we're going to go back to Vapid, who I believe is going to be next across the line. Obviously on the medium tyres, the difference with the tyres obviously being able to pick them now, 117.4, the slowest time so far. Oh, go. Australian. Ah yes, I know who you're referring to, it's Team at Murdoch, yes, the famous YouTuber. I do know, yep. So, could potentially link from Parma on the chat there, to note they could have someone there, so they got some very good pace, but it is showing the pace of the moment on 117.3. looks like was a little bit of an improvement. TMS Sora does a 1:16.3, so quickest time on the board so far, 0.3 quicker than Shot Metal. Kind of expect that from TMS Sora. He is very much one of the quickest drivers on the grid at the moment, so that's may well be your yardstick for the McLaren driver to aim for in terms of pace, really. Be interesting to see. We have sent us back on an out lap once again, so let's see if he can get a lap on the board this time and validated on his first run around the track. Obviously it can be a very difficult track to get right, with the track limits sometimes not exactly being the most helpful to you, but I believe it's a lot more difficult to corner cut on a track like this than you would actually think, as it looks like Esvar Fins is coming up for his first lap as well, the New Zealand driver in the Red Bull, and brand new surroundings for the Red Bull driver. Obviously having been a reserve for the first few races of the season and having to carry what has been a struggling team this season. Did have the Para and NT at the beginning of the season. Obviously we know Para left the league quite a few races going into, I believe we have not seen for a few races either. So really it's all going to be on Finns to try and bring home a few points here and there for the team, and we have noticed that Finns has struggled to finish races so far in the few races he has done here. So we've seen some of the reasons why that has happened, so we're looking to see if the Finns, obviously knowing that he did have some pace last weekend out in Mexico on the hard compound tyres, and we'll be looking to see how he gets on as we have Senna coming around, obviously 27.8 in the first sector, so good lines there from the McLaren, the Mercedes driver as he now heads through into the middle sector. So it'll be interesting to see how it all goes for him. Obviously we know that he's still learning the game really in terms of how everything does indeed go. We've seen that it probably can take time for pace to show through if you're coming from a younger age, and knowing that the reflexes are probably going to be a little bit quicker potentially, as he looks like he's no ERS left, so I wonder if he's had his ERS on during the actual lap itself. So I suppose if you're still learning in that stage of obviously knowing all of that. Oh, a little bit of mistake there from Sen as he goes into the wall. He's going to be the slowest driver on the track. It's going to be a 1:20 as it looks like Finns has crashed, so I don't know what's happened to Estevar Finns. I believe he's lost at the end of the first sector, so I think he has lost it on the curb on the inside there from the looks of it. We'll get an answer soon. However, we're going to go on board with Scott and see how he's getting on. He's just a little bit further up the road, so he may well... Nope, it's already going to be gone by the time he actually gets to it, but I believe that was the white curb on the right hand side. The auto spin curb from previous F1 games that has caused that issue. See, as also we know Scott didn't... I believe Scott has more pace in the locker than what he showed on his first run. That's Rubber heading through into the final sector now, looking to improve on his 1:17.364. In between Kirby and Vapid at this moment in time. He's up by just under a tenth of a second, 0.075 to be exact for the Haas driver, as we now head into the final sector, going into the final couple of corners, and crucial to get a good run coming out of here. Scott is going to head around the final corner. What is it going to be for the Haas driver? It's going to be a 1:17.4. He does not improve, so not a good final run there for the final corner there for him. I believe the next car to start around and finish a lap is going to be Vapid, so what can Vapid do? Obviously I think he's had an invalidation or had an issue, and just had an issue on that lap, so obviously backed off and decided to go for another lap. Let's see, I think that either shot middle's only in the middle sector. Where's Angela about? Angela's about to come around and start a lap, so we'll go back on board with him in just a little bit. He'll be coming around to finish the lap, as we're going to go back to Vapid. Obviously we know that Vapid has struggled in recent weeks with pace, but obviously being on top of the standings by quite the number of points that the Williams driver actually is probably the most important thing, and he's 3/10 quicker than Sora in sector 1. Obviously Hungary, not sure if it's more wheel or a pad track, but it's going to be interesting to see how it all does play out. Obviously that's kind of a debate that really can rage for a long time, is pad versus wheel when it comes to each particular game, obviously knowing that sometimes that can indeed happen. As Vapid's now heading through into the final sector, he's 6/10 up. Obviously I believe that is just a personal best time. He was purple in sector 1 on Sora, but he's not managed to get purple in sector 2. Let's see if he can get the final purple sector that he is going to be requiring to get himself through into the next. Increase his pace always on these tyres, and obviously we know he did that first run on the medium, so there's going to be a massive pace improvement. A 1:16.4. Very close to Sora's time. Very good there from him, as I believe Angelo is going to be next across the line, followed by Shot Metal. And Angelo's almost backed off, so he's had an issue on that lap, so he's invalidated. So we're going to go to Shot Metal, who is going to be next across the line in the Alfa Romeo. The only Alfa Romeo driver. Oh, it's just an invalidation there, just a tiny too far over for him. So we're going to go back to, I believe it's going to be either XCR Senna or it's going to be Sora. And I believe it's going to be Sora, who's currently now out on a lap looking to cement his place further. I believe he's made a mistake on this lap as well, so he's probably going to have to back off and go for another lap, is indeed also as Angelus Watt is going to have to do it in the Ferrari. Obviously we know that he's going to be the only one qualifying out of the Ferrari team this week, yet this qualifying session for Angelo, knowing about how that all went down, as it looks like Sora is going to go for another lap, so we'll stay on board with Sora for the time being. However, I believe Vapid is currently not. Vapid is down on his time, so he's going to be coming back in, so it will be Sora we will stay with just now. So let's see how this all goes down as Sora looks to make the gap bigger between himself and Vapid, but Vapid looks like he does have the pace to maybe potentially run with Sora this weekend. Sora just over a tenth quicker than his best time at this moment through the first sector. Let's see if the Mercedes driver can carry that same pace through as we go through into the next sector. Obviously, I've seen from other leagues you can make moves into that corner, but it is very much dependent on traction if you can make moves into that particular corner. As we head through into the end of the middle sector, you do have to carry a lot of speed and make sure you don't run too far over that curb on the outside. It's 3/10 improvement from Sora, looking like a 116 dead, could break into the 115s if he's very quick in this final sector. Sora looks to put the gap between himself and Vapid at a rate where Vapid and Williams cannot get anywhere near closer to him than he already is, as Sora is looking to extend that gap. What is it going to be? 15.8. Sort of the first one into the 15s. Very good lap there from the Mercedes driver. Next car cross line just behind him is going to be F1 Checo. Obviously we know Checo struggled last week out in his home Grand Prix in Mexico. Let's see what he can do as he comes across the finish line. It's going to be a 1:18.5. He's quicker than Senna at the moment. Can Senna respond on that? Nope, Senna is down on his time. That's going to be a big moment for Senna out the corner there, and that's going to be the end of his qualifying session. Obviously it is very easy to do that, missing that front wheel now, and obviously the curbs can be very deadly on this track, and that has clearly showed. Angelo and while we've seen that, are on and out lap once again. The Ferrari driver looking to get a lap on the board. It's actually a very difficult track to overtake on if you're actually not close enough on the main straight, because the second DRS zone, if the car on the inside can defend it, you can literally park it on the apex, and you literally will have no way of getting through that unless you feel brave and going around the outside. But then you will wash out wide if you do attempt to make a move in that particular place. So you do really need to be under half a second, maybe even 4/10s behind the car behind the car in front, to make sure that you can make the move on that main straight. But I imagine that a lot of the drivers will be harvesting ERS through most of the rest of the track, knowing the fact that nobody's really going to be able to make any moves, as it looks like Angelissimo, I think, is going to be out of sync with everyone else, and he's probably only going to get this one lap on the board. So what can Angelo do? Is it looks like we have Scott coming out the pits as well. The last driver does leave enough space for the Ferrari driver as they head round towards turn number 1. So at the moment, as we're looking at Angelo, it's currently Sora who has the pole position at this moment in time, with Vapid in second. Shot Meadow is currently in third, with Tom Gordon in fourth, and the first of the Alpines also selects the guest driver, and the McLaren is in P5, with Kirby in P6 just behind, I believe, 2 Americans in the league, of which I don't think I've actually seen most of the scene apart from him and So Fresh. Scott is in 7th at the moment, but I do expect to see him improving. Checo is obviously in 8th, look to see improvements from him. I believe Senna is not going to be able to improve on his time, so really the lowest that Angelo can really have himself is P9. Although I do think Angelo with his pace will be able to put himself a bit further up than that. 54.7 is the sector time that he has in the middle sector. Purple middle sector for the Ferrari driver. Wonder how much these purple sectors, as I say, can be believed, because obviously we know that the purple sectors in last game sometimes did lie, so it's sometimes a little bit of a guessing game as to whether or not these will actually be truthful or not. What can Angelo do across the line? It's going to be a 16.6. He pops himself in a P3. Good lap there from the Ferrari driver. With 2 minutes 20 left in the clock, I don't know if he's going to get any more laps than that on the board though, so we're going to go back to Scott now. So we're going to see the flurry of final laps come in as Scott goes to start his lap, as it looks like he's going to try and get, I think he's not happy with that one, he's backed off of it, so we're going to go to Kirby. I believe Kirby is coming around to finish on his lap. I think it may well be a personal best for the Alpine driver, the second Alpine driver. Let's see what the American in the Haas and the Alpine can actually do. I think that's a very slow lap there from him, so we're going to go to Vapid. As Vapid there also, I'm not sure if he's coming in to complete a lap or if he's going to have to come around and do another one. Nope, he's not actually on a lap either. Scott, I think he's had an incident or he's had an issue on that lap with someone blocking him there, and that's meant that it's put him down, as it looks like Kirby is currently going for his second lap. I wonder if he's the furthest along or if it's going to be, nope, that McLaren driver has just got round to starting the lap, so it will not be, oh, it's Kirby just runs a little bit too wide there. That's going to be an invalidation for the Alpine driver, so he's not going to see any more improvements. I wonder, Scott, I think he is down his time at 8.5 seconds, so he's going to be going again. The McLaren driver just started on his lap. It looks like Tom is about to come round and complete his lap. What is it going to be? He's actually down. I'm not sure with these timings if my timings are completely glitched. No, I don't think my timings are working properly here. 116.6, 76 for shot medal. Nope, that was already his time before. I'm not really sure to believe really, or who's furthest forward really at the moment. It looks like Scott has had to go for yet another lap. Either that or that's something else. Let's just say that I'm not sure with the timings if they're working properly for me at the moment, as it looks like that is a Mercedes. That could be Sora. I think Sora hasn't started on a lap yet. I'm not sure those timings, I think, are a little bugged. So I'm not really trusting those, as yeah, I wouldn't expect Sora to be doing a 3-minute lap time as the fastest lap, because Sora is just a lot quicker than that. 1:867, he does actually improve. Nope, that's his time, that's his best time so far. So we're going to go to Vapid, I believe it's going to be Scott potentially, or it's actually going to be one McLaren driver. I can actually see this crossing the first. Looks like Checo is on a lap as well. It looks like Angelissimo has finished the session. He is indeed already in the pits at 116.625. Bit of a moment there for the McLaren driver. Good improvement there, but only sees P6 for the McLaren driver. No real improvement there. So good first and qualifying run there for the McLaren driver there. Hungary in P5 just in front, and the Alpine, it looks like Shot Medal's going to be next across the line. Third place for Shot Medal, 116.494. Just pips Angelissimo to the line. Let's see what it's going to be for Scott as he crosses the finish line. What's it going to be? Oh, and I believe Scott has crashed at the line, so it's going to be only a 117.3 for him. That's a little unfortunate. We're going to immediately now go back to Sora. Sora's currently up on his time once again. It's between himself and Vapid, I believe, is the last two on track. I won the last two sets of drivers on track. Kirby, I believe, may well have just managed to get another lap in on those tyres, but they're not going to be in the best of condition. Scott has not managed to improve on his time, not. So you see his car outside the track. Sora 115.563 does improve on his time. What can Vapid do as he comes across the finish line? He is not improving. So it is going to be Sora on pole position. Let's see. Is there going to be any improvement from Checo? I believe though he is harvesting ERS, so I don't know if he's improving on his lap time. It's going to be a 118. I believe it was marginal improvements for Checo on the Aston Martin. But that is your qualifying session done and dusted. So your grid for the 5-lapper sprint runs as follows. It is TMS Sora on pole position, much like he was last week. Let's see if he has the same dominance as he had last week in Mexico as well. It's Vapid on the front low alongside him, 7/10 off. With Shot Medal not too far behind, 2/10 behind him, and third with Angelissimo alongside him, a second off pace. Tom Gorin and Australix, the McLaren guest driver in P5 and P6 alongside Tom Gorin. And first the Alpines, then it is the second Alpine of Kirby and Scott, then it is Checo, Senna, Fins and JDM. Obviously we don't know that Fins and JDM did not manage to get laps in, and we know Senna obviously crashed on his faster lap time. So as we now head into the main session, we've got the 5-lapper race to go, and then we have, I believe, 35 laps of racing around the Hungarian Grand Prix circuit. It is a dry session from looks of it. I think someone is readied up a little bit too early. I suspect that could be a certain McLaren driver. I'm not entirely sure if that's exactly what has happened there, but we will be going immediately, so there will be no delays with this one. The race will be ready shortly. Obviously, maybe not everyone will be perhaps ready for this one, obviously being ready that early on. Let's just see how this all goes. 5 red lights will be on, and they are off. Good start there from Sora. I'd like to be able to get some access to the cameras, and I have absolutely no game sound. There we go. Thank you very much, game. I appreciate having some kind of game sound, as it looks like Sora and Vapid go side by side. Vapid has jumped him off the line. It looks like the McLaren driver has been nerfed out at the start. I don't know what's happened there, as Checo and Scott go side by side. Scott round the outside, you can make it round there. If the driver we were working with does leave enough space, as it looks like Checo is trying to come back. He's trying to go side by side as the Mexican driver with the Mexican versus the American once again. It's a three-way train between himself, Scott and Kirby for P7 at the moment. Finn's looking quite close as well on the back of Shot Metal. Looks like Shot Metal, he's hanging on at the moment. You can see there Tom Gorian on the back of Angelo as well. The action's all over the place at the moment, as it looks like Angelo's struggling a little bit for pace in comparison, as Tom's going to have a go at Angelo. Let's see what he can do as we head into the contact there between Angelo and that Tom Gorian. I'm not sure exactly what happened there between the two drivers. Shot Metal still keeping himself close as well, as we still have Scott in the meantime a little bit further down the field, and then we have the McLaren driver as well, just a little bit further down as well, making his way back through. Has already got past Senna. Let's see, using a little bit of ERS but not really able to make anything there at the moment. Sora meanwhile is trying to make the move back on Vapid. Sora, however, is not going to be close enough as of quite yet. Immediately though, Angelo's fell out of DRS, just has held on that range at the moment, but Angelo's struggling in terms of pace at the moment. He is up to P3. It looks like Tom as well has jumped, has managed to get a jump. Yes, he has, as it looks like the McLaren driver has got past JDM, as JDM looks like he's fell behind the Ferrari driver at the moment, looking to get some points on the board once again, as Finn's meanwhile is still in P6 at the moment. As it looks like JDM, that is going to be a moment once again. I think there's been a collision between the McLaren driver and the Mercedes driver, or there has something happened there, and they both had a sympathy spin at the same time. Not entirely sure what's happened there, as I believe that is another spin from the McLaren driver, potentially with overheated rear tyres, which is not going to help on that front. And it's just those two trading positions at the back there. I believe that is Senna with overheated tyres as well, so I wonder if one of those has touched the curb, and then there's been a bit of contact at some point, as Vapid does indeed still lead, but Finn's looking to try and get himself past. In the meantime, past Shot Metal and P5. Try to get himself past. It's going to be a dive from Finn's down the inside of Shot Metal. Shot Metal just leaves in the space there as they go side by side. Shot Metal's going to have the inside length next corner. The New Zealand driver has to stay in behind once again. That's cost them time though, and Shot Metal's now out of the DRS range, and that's going to cost them both time here. We go back to the battle at the front between Sora and Vapid. Let's see if the DRS is going to make the difference here between the two drivers. Vapid looking to keep himself ahead at this moment and time as we go back as well. While that's going on, Finn's still trying to keep himself close to the back of Shot Metal. Obviously we know that Shot Metal, I think, is maybe struggling a little bit for pace himself. Maybe a setup or something else is not suiting these conditions at the moment. The Alfa Romeo driver struggling a little bit to keep himself going. Meanwhile, we're going to go back to the front once again, as the DRS is going to be enabled this lap around. Can Sora repass the Williams driver? So you look rearward from the Williams driver, as the Mercedes driver sits in the rear view mirrors looking menacing. Is Vapid going to go defensive here to try and keep himself past? I don't think he's going to actually be, he's not going to do that here, I don't think. Maybe realising he wants the final lap. A little bit of contact between the two drivers, as it looks like that's another yellow again at the back. That is XCR Senna, who has spun. Not having the best of races is the Mercedes driver at the moment, as Vapid does lose the position to there, as it looks like Finn's and Shot Metal going side by side. Shot Metal loses the position to Finn's, and Finn's up to P5. Now he can chase after the drivers in front, but he has a 1.9 second gap, and there's a yellow once again. That is Senna not having fun with that, as JDM picks up a time penalty. Some of the curbs, while they're not the most difficult to actually have to worry about, but you do have to be a little bit careful of them at points. As here goes Scott trying to make a move, as it looks like that is Checo round at the back. I think he's touched the curb there, and that's cost him time, as it looks like there goes XCR Senna out of the session. He is retired at what I believe is that corner. I'm sure there's a little bit of run off area there. I'm not sure how that one has happened. Very curious as to how that one has actually been done. Meanwhile, Scott trying to make the move on the back of Shot Metal. Metal really struggling to keep himself just within a second. Scott's probably going to have to use a little bit of battery here. Shot Metal's going to have to be very defensive here. Not much ERS deployment left for the Alfa Romeo driver as he tries to defend from Scott. He's going to do a little bit of not blocking, but oh, that's a little bit of contact there between the two drivers. That obviously is going to say it's Scott there. Right, I'm having absolutely none of this, and I'm going down the inside whether you like it or not. This is still side by side. Scott still has the inside line for the next corner. Shot Metal. There's going to be contact. Keep it clean, lads. Scott does eventually get the move done, but that was very questionable as to what just happened there. Anyway, we're going to get ourselves off that for just a second. We're going to go back to the front four. Vapid has lost ground with Angelo now catching him for what is third place. I believe Sora though is going to come through to win the sprint race and get pole position for the main feature race. And it is very much just a case in point of he didn't make any mistakes apart from the losing the lead off the line to Vapid, and did come back at him though very quickly as here comes Sora to take the victory. And it will be the 3 points for him, 2 points for Vapid. Angelo does manage to hold on, and I believe Tom Gordon just finishes outside the top. And it looks like Finns finishes in P5 with Scott in P6. Shot Metal in P7. Could be some controversial moment there. Controversial moment said between those two drivers for the moment that happened on the previous lap. That lap going into that. This looks like Metal. It looks like Kirby's going to finish in P8. With JDM in 9th, so a couple of points I believe for Ferrari. I'm not entirely sure point system here. Whereas Chekhov will finish P10, and I believe the McLaren driver with absolutely no front wing, who retires on the final corner, is going to finish in P11. That is still. And that will be that for the main race. The sprint race. Your TMS Sora picking up 3 points, along with Vapid picking up 2, and Angelo picks up the final point for the sprint. Angelo being one of the consistent drivers this year, with a good, steady stream of podiums in the Italian driver in the Italian car, but has not managed to put together that there. For Finns, thank you for following the RFL. Count. I said something else there, sorry. Not entirely sure what happened there. I think, well, yeah, wasn't yourself, and yeah, not entirely sure what I'm saying there. So your grid rundown for the main race, it is TMS Sora, who's going to be starting from pole position in this race alongside Vapid front row unchanged. It's Angelo and Tom Gorian who both move up, who will start 3rd and 4th on the second row, and then it's Finns and Scott. Obviously we've seen Finns have a lot of pace. Let's see how that transfers over to this race itself, and then it's going to be Shot Metal and Kirby alongside each other 7th and 8th. 9th and 10th is going to be the other Ferrari of 8, JDM and Checo. The lone Aston Martin in this race with the American guest driver in the McLaren, and Senna starting from P12. Obviously we know that Senna had a bit of a rough race, so yeah. P11 to P6 at turn 1, not too bad there, Finns, not too bad. Well, obviously we know you have the pace, it's just all about putting it together. As we currently now just waiting for the driver, everything to be restarted back out again. Obviously completely different potential weather for the main race itself, obviously 35 laps ahead of the drivers to enjoy or endure, whichever one of the two really goes for the drivers, because obviously we know that some of the drivers do appreciate the track, but some drivers do not. While that is going on, I'm going to grab some quick old refreshments. If you want to grab refreshments now, probably now is the best time to do so. Hungary not always known for bringing the best racing, but should hopefully give us a good race here, even with only 12 drivers. Sorry about that. Yeah, race is about to get itself underway. We are just waiting for the final countdown timer there to set itself up, be done. We have words sometimes. 35 laps of this Hungarian Grand Prix for the drivers to tackle. Interesting to see how the mindsets, as per usual, all go through and the drivers actually tackle everything. Looks like a dry race, dry start at the moment. Very clear blue skies from the looks of the pit lane. I'm interested to see if anyone goes different on strategy again, because obviously we know that certain drivers can be. Obviously we knew that Shotman obviously went with soft compound tires. It did not exactly work out the best for him, as he could not get his way through the traffic. So I'm assuming we probably won't see that happen again in Lit, but we know that Finns does have pace for what he managed to do on only 5 laps. So he could be up there in this race. We know that Sora, if he gets a decent launch, will be away and gone. But Vapid will be looking to keep himself close in the first few laps and try and make the Mercedes driver use a lot of his DRS, as there are places you can save around here, but you do need to probably save a lot in the middle sector if you use a lot of it in the main straights and the straights in between. Not the longest, but you can still make moves into them if you're feeling brave enough. So the drivers are still picking their strategies and making sure of everything going on. We'll have a quick old look at what people could potentially be starting on for the race. I'd like to actually click on that, please. Thank you. So it looks like Sora is the only one, apart from Shotmail, opting for the hard compound tires. Everyone else around on the mediums. And yeah, I've seen Senna was there on the softs for a brief second there, but I think he has changed strategy. Starting from the back, I'm not entirely sure it's the wisest idea. But we have the countdown timer on and we will be live for racing action soon. It's going to be interesting to see how undercuts or overcuts work for those in the mediums and the hard tire runners. Get those tyres up to temperature. It's going to be quite important for the hard tyres to be up to temperature so that they do not have issues with sliding on the curbs or sliding through rear tyres. As the drivers get underway for the formation lap, you can see the strategies on the screen there. No one is starting the soft, so that sort of bomb strategy is relevant. It's good to do the reverse of that strategy, as Fins has been disqualified from the session and I don't know if he was ready or not. So Fins, I believe, was in the softs, mediums. Sora has spun on the formation lap, so that's the thing of exactly what I say is that, what are you doing, Sora? Having a few issues there as the Mercedes driver, not entirely sure what is going in there. Not sure if that's a tire heat issue or if that's something else. Few details up on the screen. There we go. Looks like you could potentially be under fueling on a truck like this, so you probably can run a car under fuel, but you do need to be careful that you make it to the end on the tyres. CMS Sora as I say, he's way back through again to get himself back to the front of that queue, but just needs to be careful. Just need to be careful with that. Ah, so you've been in the collision. Okay. Best thing to do on that front, Fins, is ticket it. Drivers start to form up for the grid as they pick their spots and where they potentially want to park. As we can see, it's confusing seeing the fact that we've got first place in second. He's now going to be back up to first in a minute as he gets through, obviously having spun. Fins is going to have very cold tyres, which is fun. Don't know who you are, good sir. If you can please leave. Formed up there, just a good run, a good box lineup for him. Looks like a good box line there. As JDM, I believe, is the only person who's had an issue on this actual box form up. So, good job from everyone else there to form your car up correctly. Anyway, the cars are all on track as the lights are on for the Hungarian Grand Prix. 5 red lights, and it is lights out and away we go. Great camera angle game. I'd like a better one than that as Scott will immediately gets a past fences. Kirby's been caught napping as well. No, it's Team Tom and Scott down towards turn number 1. And I think it's round the outside for Tom going. He's going to try and make the move round the outside. I think he's going to be... Nope, it's going to be Scott who's going to have the inside light on the outside. Here we go, Vapid. That's a little bit of contact between himself and Scott. Obviously, there's been a little bit of frostiness between these two. As of recently, it looks like the McLaren driver's up to P9 as well. Past Checo in the start. Checo can manage to come back potentially. Not at the moment. It looks like the two Alpines are close together as well. Looking back here at the battle between Haas and Williams as they now head through. Angelo is up to P2. Good start from the Ferrari driver. However, Sora does still lead this Grand Prix, and this could be a huge chance now if Sora can get those tyres up to temperature. He's probably got some pace on that Ferrari driver once he gets those tyres up to temperature, but it's going to be very curious to see how it all goes. Goran, meanwhile, is trying to get past Scott in the battle for what is P4 currently. Alpine driver versus the Haas driver. Is he going to try and think about it? He's just looking in the mirrors, probing. Where can he make a move on the Haas? Be very curious to see how this all, obviously most of the drivers on the same compound of tyres. Looks meanwhile as well the McLaren driver as well is going to potentially make a move on this coming up soon on the back of JDM. He's going to be very close. JDM struggling on pace. He's already fell nearly 2 seconds back, but he's not been able to do anything as of yet. Let's see how that all goes down in just a bit as Tom Gorin, meanwhile, with his teammate Justin Tow just behind, is still trying to make a move. There's Angelo still keeping himself just in check. Obviously the mediums will be the better tyre at this moment. And we know that is going to change at some point. It looks like Fins has cleared XRSN at the back. Obviously we've seen that the cold tyres, him getting hit in the formation lap has not helped his tyres out in the slightest. And meant that he dropped back, I think, all the way to pretty much the back of the field. And has having to work his way back through again. So pretty much a last 2 question mark challenge for the Red Bull driver. As Tom Gurn meanwhile is still keeping himself just on tabs, but it looks like Vapid though has got a little bit of ground on Scott now. Is about the gap's about half a second Vapid, meanwhile, is trying to get himself as close as possible to the back of Angelo. Angelo just hanging on, but he's going to be dropping out of DRS fairly soon from the back of Sora. Sora is putting the afterburners on and is heading away from Angelo at the moment. And it's going to be very crucial for Vapid to get past this Ferrari driver as soon as possible. He's going to need all of what he can do here. 0.3 of a second, 0.4 of a second. What is it going to be as we head through the final corner? He's going to have to get himself past these as they're probably fast lap for Sora coming up 1 minute 20.2 on the hard compound tyres. Here comes Vapid. Angelo does go defensive for a brief second, however you can see that there's not going to be anything that happens there. It looks like there's been a move made by the McLaren driver. As Checo, meanwhile, is going to be side by side. There's going to be contact. I think JDM's come across there. He's lost 3 positions as a result. However, he does let the Aston Martin go back through, but he's dropped all the way back to P11 as a result of that. Fins, meanwhile, is trying to get past the McLaren driver, trying to work his way back through, having had a terrible start. What is he going to do here? I think he's going to have to stay behind for the moment, but the Red Bull driver is putting the pressure on. Heading through, obviously, that curve there, you don't want to touch. A few people have already found this out, as it looks like the McLaren driver is struggling a little bit for pace at this moment in time. In comparison to the likes of Fins, obviously we know Fins is a very quick driver, so how's the New Zealand driver going to manage to get past the McLaren, the American in the Haas? I think the move is going to come soon. However, is it going to come here, or should we go back, as it looks like XCR Senna has already dropped out of the race in the back of the field to the Mercedes, a double retirement. I think that is going to be either a virtual safety car or a full. So a little bit of chance for the drivers to refresh, but that puts a halt to Sora for the moment. But knowing the fact of that, Sora can now build up his lead. It looks like the McLaren driver is into the pits, which makes me think there was some damage on that car, taking advantage of the pit stops. I'm going to go into the hard compound tyres. A lot of laps on those hards to go if they do decide to go for it. 11 drivers left in this Grand Prix. Hard tyres do indeed go onto that McLaren. Waiting for the... As there goes XCR Senna from the session, not being the best of races from Senna this week, obviously unlike last week where he had that great duel with Checo for most of the race. He's not managed to replicate that same form as he did last week, and he is gone from this session within 4 laps of this Grand Prix. Only a VSC though for that though. I'm quite surprised considering that but you can have safety cars for a whole lot less. DRS has been enabled. Angelo's been caught napping a little bit by Vapid, and Vapid's looking to try and get himself past. I believe Angelo maybe being a little bit cautious of the Delta, which I can understand sometimes the Delta screwing you over on this game, but Vapid looking to try and get the move done on the back of Angelo, but Angelo's finally managed to get a little bit of pace back. However, Scott is right behind as well on the back of Vapid, as Angelo goes to the fully to the right, knowing the fact there's a little bit of a move there. Is Angelo, he's not going to be able to move again. Is Vapid going to go down the inside? It's going to be potentially down the inside. Angelo, they go side by side in towards the next corner. DRS is going to be enabled once again. Scott, meanwhile, has got a watching brief just behind him. What is going on here? Vapid, though, has not been able to clear him. And now Sora has a 2-second gap, and that gap is just getting bigger to Angelo, who is going to have to wab his mirrors. Looking in his mirrors rather than looking forward at the Mercedes driver. And this has brought Scott back into play as well. Looking at this, with Tom Gorey not too far behind, and even Kirby in P6 is right at the back of this queue, could also get himself involved with everything that is going on here. Vapid meanwhile is still all over the back of Angelo, just looking a little bit further up for the battle for P2. However, it looks like Vapid, after that initial sort of good sprightly getaway after the VSC, has not managed to make it work. Obviously we know a lot of these places you're going to get a lot of dirty air, and that could actually potentially be affecting the Williams driver and everyone else behind. However, Angelo's closed the gap a little bit in those last few corners. Ferrari driver, obviously we know the mediums will still be the better tyre at the moment, but DRS is going to be enabled once again. Angelo is not using the battery yet. Is he going to go defensive this lap around? You can see that Williams getting closer and closer. Is he going to go defensive? He doesn't feel the need to go defensive at the moment. Is the Williams driver going to try and go for moving to this next corner? That's where the battery usage is being done. Is Vapid, is this clearly showing here why the DRS on this second straight doesn't really do all that much unless you're pretty much guaranteed to be right alongside the person you're making the best attempts to overtake. But yeah, Soro, after the initial time of Angelo pulling him in just a little bit, is pulling away once again. The gaps ebb and flow between the front two there, around about 2.3, 2.5 seconds, somewhere between that gap. But obviously Sora flying away at the moment. Shot Medal meanwhile has not been able to really make anything of those hard tyres, a little bit further buried in the pack, and he's 1.3 seconds. He could be in this train fairly soon, along with SFR Finn, so we could potentially have a battle all the way down from second, all the way down to 8th, potentially, coming up in the next few laps. Tom Goring meanwhile is having a look at the back of Scott. He's kind of probing away, trying to see where the Haas is weak, and seeing where he can actually make the move stick. However, we know that this is a massive DRS train at the moment. I wonder if any sort of undercuts are going to come into play here. So there goes Angelo trying to go defensive on the back of Vapid, moving once again across as Angelo goes back to the racing line, realising he's not going to have any issues with being overtaken there. Meanwhile, Tom Goring not being able to make anything stick there. I wonder if the downforce these drivers are indeed running is causing issues for some of these guys on the straights. I wonder if some are running more aero than others. I wonder if that's potentially what's going on with Vapid, because I think that Angelo is running maybe potentially lower downforce in the Ferrari than what Vapid is in the Williams. Very crucial to see that at the end of it. Would be crucial. Interesting to know if that's exactly what indeed happened. As Tom Gordon meanwhile is still keeping himself close. He's got a watching brief at the back of this queue pretty much, as Kirby meanwhile as well is keeping himself close. Shot Medal as well, and the Alfa Romeo is looking to gain a bit of ground alongside SFR Finns, who is not too far behind on that train either. DRS being saved, however Scott, I think Vapid's had an issue and has fell out of range. He's just got himself back in, but he's going to be vulnerable here potentially. As Scott here is going to have to use a little bit of the battery here to actually help himself actually protect his position. You can see the Haas there, the closest he's been yet to the back of the Williams. The Williams driver is going to have to go defensive, but does have DRS. It's very much, I think there's going to be, obviously we can see there's Angelo managed to get a little bit of a break there, as Scott did not manage to really make anything stick yet. Obviously we know these drivers are probably not going to take any risks as of yet. Tom Goring meanwhile still keeping himself close in this battle. It looks like Kirby as well. The rear of that train will have Shot Medal for company soon as well, as the Alfa Romeo driver looks to gain a little bit of ground on those hard compound tyres. Obviously we know that either the hard tyre runners will be going to the mediums, or potentially, if they can do it, onto the softs. We do know the soft tyres though are not the best race tyre this year, because the race tyre, they do kind of die very quickly. As it looks like JDM, and a little bit of difference in a battle there, it looks like the McLaren driver trying to get himself as close as possible at the back of JDM. JDM really struggling for grip here, as there's potentially going to be a move done here or sometime in the next few corners between the McLaren driver, Oslex there, coming round as they head round the first sector, coming into the second sector, a little bit wide from JDM there. It looks like there's going to be a move up the inside potentially. JDM's probably not going to want to yield. However, the McLaren driver, there's a little bit of contact there. Obviously we know that corner, you can understeer across that corner there. JDM skirts the track limits there and gets a 3-second penalty for his troubles. However, that's fair play from the Ferrari driver there. I think that was for the contact in the previous corner, and the McLaren driver, that's P10 with a 13.5 second gap to Checo in front. Shot Medal meanwhile is having a look at Kirby, who's dropped out of DRS. I wonder if had an issue there for the Alpine driver. Shot Medal though, not much DRS to muse himself in comparison to Kirby, who's on even less at the moment. Meanwhile, still looking at the gap at the front, 3.5 seconds is the gap between TMS Sora and Angelissimo. The Ferrari driver not having the same level of grip or the same level of pace as the Mercedes driver, who currently leads and is looking to get as much of a gap as where possibly he can. Obviously we know we've had the VSC already, so now he's just to build the gap, and it's literally all he is trying to do is get himself as far away as per possible. But it looks more like at the moment that it's a massive stalemate going on between from second down to fifth at the moment. We know Kirby's dropped out a little bit, as we have a yellow behind. That's SFR Finns, who's had an issue in the middle sector. I believe that was on his own. I wonder if that will cause a safety car potentially to come out. I don't know if that, nothing's happened as of yet. I wonder what has actually happened there. We're going to actually see where his car actually is. Friends, that's, I'm amazed that's there. I don't know how that's not a safety car, to be honest. Anyway, back to the front. Vapid, meanwhile, is still looking at the rear gearbox of a Ferrari, and has been looking at that gearbox for about 10 laps now, and is probably getting very impatient to try and get past. However, just cannot find a way past. 25 laps left in this Grand Prix. Obviously, we know it's not a short lap round here, but it's not a long lap either. As it looks like Shot Metal has managed to get a position off of Kirby. The Alpine driver not quite having the same level of pace as what the Alfa Romeo driver does. And you can see pretty much that there's not much ERS there for either of those guys. Now Shot Metal can try and save a little bit of ERS in the next massive train. Meanwhile, Tom Gorin, I think he was trying to make a move into that corner on Scott just in front of the Haas, and try and maybe distract the Haas driver a little bit from the cars in front of Vapid and Angelo. Obviously at the moment it looks, as I say, Sora is still pulling away from these guys in front, and Angelo is doing the Mercedes driver a massive help here. And JDM is another time penalty for JDM. He's on 6 seconds now. As I say, very easy to pick up, just pick up innocuous warnings for stuff here and there. And is Vapid going to be close enough to make the move here? Angelo goes all the way to the right to defend. Obviously we've seen what happened here obviously with Schumacher and Barrichello in real life, obviously 2010 I believe it was, between those two, and between the Williams and the Mercedes at the time, pretty much pushing Barrichello right up against the wall for what was the final point at that particular moment in time in that race in 2010. I wonder if we will see any moments like that created here today. Obviously we know that engine failures aren't a thing in real life, so we won't see some of the stuff that's actually ever happened from real life, but Tom Gorin as well is keeping himself close. That's Vapid with a time penalty. He skirted the track limits a bit too much there, has the Williams driver, and that's going to cost him potentially come the end of this race, because he's stuck in this train and he still cannot pass. He's in that range where he's just getting the dirty air. That's a great camera shot. You can see all 4 drivers in that one camera shot from the helicopter above, as Angelismo continues to be a massive roadblock here. I wonder if Vapid's potentially going to go for an undercut move, potentially in the pit lane, to try and get himself past Angelo. As he knows he may well not come out in that much traffic, he may well get into that little gaggle after Shot Metal or Kirby potentially. But the battling between Kirby and Shot Metal has cost them quite a bit in terms of catching up. 1.6 seconds as Shot Metal, so we know, as there goes once again. You can see all the drivers snaking their way towards the right hand side. So once again, Tom Gorin tries to make a move using a little bit more of the battery that time around to try and get himself as close as possible. However, the move is happening now. Vapid's gone up the inside. He's waited a few laps in this Grand Prix. Angelismo trying to come back at him round the inside. Allison going to have the better line round the outside. Angelo, however, Vapid is very wide. This is going to give chance for Angelo back down the inside. Little bit of a moment there as Angelo does drop to third, and now Scott can potentially have a go at him as well down the inside. However, Scott thinks better of it right there, and this has now meant that one change of the lead, and obviously it puts you out a little bit of focus as we head into the next sequence of corners. I wonder if Angelo is now going to be able to have a go down the straight. We've seen that Vapid was struggling to overtake the Ferrari driver, so can the Ferrari driver come back at the Williams now? And the roles being reversed now, Angelo can save a little bit of battery here potentially behind the Williams, and the Williams driver is going to have to expend a lot of that battery now to try and catch up. However, 7 seconds is still the gap between himself and Sora. That gap has just been huge for this entire time, and just expanding. There's nothing that can really be done at the moment. Shot Metal meanwhile has got himself into range, with Kirby really struggling for pace now in the other Alpine in 7th. He's dropped 2 seconds to Shot Metal, I believe, and this little queue of cars. Here comes Angelissimo once again. The battery is being used by the Ferrari driver. Obviously, Scott behind will be able to see that the battery is probably blinking at one point or another on that Ferrari car. And Scott is just looking at this, waiting his opportunity. A little bit more ERS deployment to use than what the Ferrari driver in front does. However, Vapid is obviously knowing the fact that if you're stuck with a car in your DRS for more than a few laps, there is no chance you're shaking that car out of the DRS. You can obviously see it just in front As Angelo, he's probably quick in the right place. He's quick, but he's not quick in the right places at the moment to try and get himself back past. You can see the Ferrari driver has dropped a little bit. However, he's still close at the moment. Tom Gordon looks like the shot middle is going to join this as well. JDM is into the pits first, and the mediums onto the hard, medium runners onto the hards. For the Ferrari driver, obviously only the VSC to really report anything at the moment, which is to slow TMS Sora down 8.2 seconds and expanding the gap. So we have seen though that Sora can make mistakes. From the lead of the Grand Prix will be important for him mentally that he does not make any of those mistakes and spins at any point, and this which could bring him into the field. It will be a lot harder for him to make moves as Scott is bailing for the pit lane, as is Tom Gordon. Those two deciding that they need to go for an undercut on the cars in front. Meanwhile, Angelo is carried on. It's a 3-second time penalty for Checo as well now, and first of the time penalties for him. As Angelo looks like he's was trying to think about a move there. The gaps kind of have split now as Scott and Tom go onto the hard compound tyres. It's just going to be interesting to see how Vapid responds and Angelissimo respond, because obviously we know Shot Metal is going a little bit longer. Kirby as well, obviously doing the extra lap because of his teammate being in the pit lane, obviously not wanting to double stack, will be very crucial. As I say, I think Scott and Tom have come out in P7 and P8, just behind. I believe Scott is still, Tom is just sitting in the range just behind still of Scott, with those two both catching up to the back of Checo now. Scott looking to try and get himself as close as possible to the back of Checo. Obviously we know Checo has not yet pitted, so he'll probably drop in behind these guys when he does pit. Obviously we know that Sora and Shot Metal are going to go longer on this Grand Prix. It'll be interesting to note how much longer potentially that Angelo and Vapid may potentially go, but I do believe we will see them in the pits this lap. So looking at the leaders at the moment, I don't know how much time is going to be lost in the pit lane here. Angelo's carried on. That's an interesting strategy there from the Ferrari driver. However, Vapid is into the pit lane, so going for a 2-lap overcut is Angelo on everyone else around him. As Kirby is also carried on as well, so that's a crucial moment to say on Kirby there. There's like Vapid onto the hards. He has left the pit box now. Let's see where Scott is going to be in comparison. Are they going to jump Vapid? Not quite. It's very close. However, this is going to be worn. This is going to be very cold hard tires versus warmed hards. They go side by side. There may well potentially be some contact here between the two drivers. Potentially Scott around the outside is going to have it, and it's going to be move done for him. Tom Gordon as well is going to try and line it up. Was a very clean move from Scott round the outside of Vapid. That was not ideal for Vapid. Knowing the undercut now is the most powerful you can actually have. And Angelo, I wonder if that's anything that Angelo can potentially take out of that. As now Vapid struggling a little bit. He's about 7/10 off as Scott is having a go at Checo. I imagine this move will be a fairly easy done deal move here for the Haas on the Aston Martin. The Aston Martin obviously, whoa, there's a little bit of contact there. I do not know what happened there. Was there some contact between the rear wing and the front wing, the rear wing and the front wing of Checo and the front wing of Scott, as he tries to go back down the inside? Obviously this is not ideal for Vapid, obviously with cold tyres. Checo's going to probably have to defend the line here. Let's see what Checo does here. Not much deployment here. He's very wide coming out of the final corner. Can he make the move stick using all of the battery? However, he's not going to probably have enough deployment to get himself there, as Scott is going to be down the inside. Vap meanwhile is trying to be opportunistic, and he's been back down the inside again. However, Scott is going to try and go back down the inside once again. There's going to be a little bit of contact, a little bit of squeezing between the two drivers. Can he keep this going as well? Angelo on the hards. I didn't even notice that. He's come out in P3. He's come out ahead of these squabbling too. There's a bit of contact there between himself and Vapid. Vapid is round. Probably doesn't have front wing, so there's going to be a lot of contact there. I think that is a safety car deployed between those two. And now this is an ideal thing for Sora now, because Sora can probably pit and go onto the mediums potentially, and he is indeed going for that strategy. Shot Medal as well. This can potentially help him out. But that was I wonder if that was just a little bit of contact off the rear corner for Vapid there, and it just sent him round into the wall, and he had to change obviously the front wing. We'll probably see Checo in the pits as well. Shot Metal does indeed opt for the pit lane. Medium compound tyres for him. Angelo and I believe that is a lapped car. Yep, that is GDM. As Shut Metal now is into the pit lane himself on those hard compound tyres. He's probably going to be a little bit close to Angelo. This could be a chance for Angelo to potentially grab second place back off of there and probably help him out. And it's going to be a good slick stop there from Shut Metal. As he comes back out, he's going to be out massively at second place. The hard tyres and a very opportunistically timed safety car. It's going to help out the Alfa Romeo driver hugely. As now it's medium tyres for those guys. It's going to be hard to see if Angelo can keep up, but I wonder if there will be any pace there for the Ferrari driver. It's going to be very crucial to see how he now gets on. Obviously we know that the safety car will slow down the front two now. Now everyone gets reset once again, as the McLaren driver is onto the mediums. Probably will go to the end of the Grand Prix as well, as he has Vapid, who has gone onto the mediums, and I think he's back behind. Yep, obviously the front line change has not helped him. The McLaren driver is obviously out in P8 just in front of him on the medium compound tyres. Checo now, so it looks like Tom Gorin is on the oldest tyres alongside Scott. Obviously we know that they did the undercut on the drivers around them, so they're going to be in the oldest tyres come the end. However, they will probably have the warmest tyres, potentially, if some people haven't done proper warm-up once the actual end of the safety car actually arrives. But it's going to be very interesting to see how Sora, obviously he had a massive lead, and now as he's been wiped out once again, obviously that would have been done with the pit stop anyway, but Sora now has to reset and go again for this safety car restart. It will be crucial to see how he does indeed handle it. The drivers are all still behind safety car at the moment. Obviously the drivers in the mediums may well not want to weave their tyres nearly as much to create as less wear as possible. Obviously probably your most ideal thing to do this is to do that near the end of the actual safety car period, when the safety car is coming in. Obviously we know that Sora will dictate the pace of the safety car pace once it does indeed come in, and the safety car restart pace rather, I should say. We'll be interested to see how that gets all approached. And we know that these guys behind, obviously we know that Angelo struggled on the mediums and was holding up a massive train of cars behind him, but he has a completely different car now to deal with. Obviously we know that Vapid, after what has happened there, is going to be a driver on a mission to try and keep up as much as per possible. However, he does have that penalty to worry about, and a McLaren driver who is a complete unknown probably to him of how good his pace actually is. Obviously we haven't really seen the McLaren driver's pace really yet, because obviously the spins near the start of the race, and I believe the incidences that have happened have meant, obviously with the terrible sprint race for the McLaren driver, obviously knowing that, obviously starting near the back of the field, we never got to see what the true pace actually was. If his qualifying pace was anything to go off of, knowing the fact that he was in the midfield running in qualifying. Obviously qualifying is a completely different. Safety car in this lap. Let's see how this gets approached by TMS Sora. Is Shut Metal going to go with him potentially? Let's just see. Sora's going to have a lot more pressure on a car who's in the same compound of tyres behind. Let's see how it gets approached, as the safety car is going to go into the pits this lap. Sorry about that, if that was picked up on the microphone. Sora has not yet gone. Got to be careful of the acceleration and deceleration once you go. As Sora has gone. We have green flag racing here as Angelo looks like to get a better start than what he does. Shut Metal going a little bit defensive here in the Alfa Romeo. So Alfa Romeo first, as he's still getting a little bit heat into those tyres. Obviously didn't do enough weaving. Very close there to the back is Scott. As we now get up, we are back underway at the Hungarian Grand Prix here for RFL Season 8, race number 17. Scott trying to keep himself as close as possible. Shut Metal is already dropping positions, as there goes Checo side by side with the McLaren driver. The McLaren driver around the outside. A little bit of mistake from Checo. That's a good move there from the McLaren driver as he head round. Checo tries to come back, however he's not going to be close enough. And now Checo will is now going to have to defend against Vapid. on much better tyres. However, look at the difference as Vapid has got. He's trying to go down the inside. He hasn't been able to make it stick though, and it is unfortunately still stuck behind there for the moment. Tom Gorey, meanwhile, is closer to the back of Scott than what Scott is to the back of Angelo. Meanwhile, I think at the front as well, Shot Metal has already been dropped out of DRS range, and Angelo is still close as well. So Angelo on those tyres does seem to have a little bit more pace than what he did before. We're still looking at Tom Gordon, who's trying to make the move here on Scott. Scott is struggling to keep himself within range at the moment on the hard compound tyres. As there goes Sora, fast lap 118.999 for the Mercedes driver. Down towards turn 1 they go. Tom Gordon now Alpine doing a little bit of his ERS, trying to get himself as close as possible at the back of the Haas car with 15 laps of this Grand Prix left to go. Scott meanwhile does deploy a little bit of his own ERS to keep himself close. However, Angelo is now dropped out of a second. So Shut Metal now is going to have no pressure down from him. However, I think Sora is immediately still building up his lead, looking at the gaps between himself and Shut Metal. Metal not really having the same pace. It looks like Scott though has dropped out of a second as well. He's dropping in and out of that gap at the moment, even DRS being one of the most crucial things around here to keep yourself within range and potentially save ERS as you go along, as it's going to be soon found out about that. Kirby meanwhile is still close as well to the back of that, and the McLaren driver is actually going to bring himself into play for what is currently P3 at this moment in time. Well, P3, P4. Oshalix is down the inside. I believe that's Kirby who has spun. There's been a little bit of contact between, I believe, a couple of the drivers there. I don't know what happened with Kirby there, but he has lost time there, as it looks like Tom Gordon meanwhile is still trying to get ahead there, as the McLaren driver just slowly moves up from the back of the Alpine driver there. That will be getting closer and closer in the rearview mirror. Meanwhile, Vapid there is trying to make the move down the inside. The McLaren driver, is he going to defend the inside? No, he's left the inside wide open for a send down the inside from Vapid. Vapid does indeed send it down the inside. The McLaren driver does leave him the space, and a good move from there from Vapid. Vapid now meanwhile is now going to try and catch up with Tom Gorian and get himself close as possible, but I think the chances of a podium potentially now are gone for Vapid unless he has a lot of pace on these tyres to get himself as close as possible. Meanwhile, one of the closest battles on track at the moment, apart from the McLaren driver who has just been overtaken by Vapid and is still within the range which he needs to be at the moment, is Tom Gorian versus Scott. Scott is still keeping himself just ahead at the moment, but he is struggling. He does not have DRS anymore. Help his cause against the Alpine driver behind. He's dropped out of range. Angelo meanwhile has also dropped out of range with Shut Metal in front, and Shut Metal is really struggling for pace when it comes to himself versus Sora. So Sora meanwhile is just pulling away at the front of the field. Tom Gordon meanwhile is still looking all over the back of Scott. Scott not looking as secure at the moment as what he did in the mediums, but it's going to be very important as Tom Gordon is pretty much pushing that Haas, or Tom Gordon is pushing Scott pretty much around that corner. As here we go, Scott gonna have to defend the inside line potentially here. Is he gonna go to the right? I wonder if Tom Gordon is potentially gonna use a lot of his ERS here. I wonder if he's gonna defend it at all. As down the inside goes the Alpine driver. I wonder if Vap is gonna try and follow through and make the move there, but I don't know if there's anything's gonna happen on that front. I wonder if he's gonna be close enough down the inside. He's gonna have to go around to the outside. However, he's down the inside. I wonder if there'll be any contact here as we head through into that, as he's going to be around the outside. Scott still has the inside. However, he's managed to get back around the outside, and we'll have the outside down to the next corner. He goes side by side almost. Scott pushes, crowds out the Williams driver as Kirby picks up, I believe, his first time penalty of the race as well in the background. This is all, as I say, helping the McLaren driver, who's still in the back of this as well. Will probably get a position off Vapid. Meanwhile, no one else has time penalties for the moment, so the battle is now for P5. Tom Gorian has got himself away at the moment. Needs to get himself as far away as possible from that Haas driver behind. However, the Haas driver is probably going to use a little bit of the battery to try and get himself as far away as per possible from the Alpine driver, using a little bit of the battery to get himself as far from the Haas as possible. However, he does have the company of Vapid behind. A driver is probably going to be very hot-headed underneath that helmet after what happened earlier on at the exact moment between those two drivers. Obviously, what caused the safety car to happen. Scott is going to try and make the move here on the back of Tom Gordon down the inside. Is he going to be able to make it stick? It is a Daniel Ricciardo send down the inside from Scott. However, he's not managed to pull it off, and
Tom Gordon still has the inside line for the next corner. However, the outside line has been a good favourite for Scott. However, that is completely closed off from Tom Gordon as Vapid looks to try and make the move once again into this sequence of corners. However, he's not going to be close enough to really make the move, as the McLaren driver behind has completely disappeared from that, as you can have Kirby for company just behind. You can see though how close this battle for P5 currently is. Tom Gordon has to get himself out of this battle if he wants to have any chance on those hards versus Angelismo. Obviously knows those 2 laps older. Scott as well, the same age of tyres as per what Tom Gordon is on. Meanwhile, while this is all going on, the battle at the gaps at the front, it is 3.8 seconds and getting bigger between himself and Shut Metal. Metal meanwhile is gaining ground on Angelo, who is really struggling to keep pace with the Alfa Romeo driver, and then it is Tom Gordon who's gaining ground on Scott. Scott gaining ground on Tom Gordon meanwhile, and is still in this battle. Vapid meanwhile is probably going to go for the move here. And now this is where Scott probably will have to go defensive to the right hand side. However, it's not going to be. It's going to have to be a send from the outside for Vapid, and he's still going to be there. Is the Haas. However, the grip difference is soon going to be a thing, and Vapid is up the inside. Scott meanwhile just has to stay close to the back, and you probably see Kirby and Oshalix, the McLaren driver, looking there as they're battling for 7th place between those two. The McLaren driver trying to see if he can get himself as close as possible on the medium compound tyres versus Kirby on the hards. A little bit wide there from the McLaren driver. Got to be careful not to pick up time penalty warnings for those. It is very easy to do. There's JDM with another time penalty himself. 12 seconds there from the Ferrari driver, and at the back of the field, only looking really to finish this race as far as he is concerned. McLaren meanwhile has fell back a little bit, so we're going to back to Vapid. Vapid now is looking at the back of Tom Gordon. Tom Gordon's probably not going to be as accommodating as for what Scott was, for leaving him potentially more space. Tom Gordon is going to have that his mirrors filled with Williams, and needs to keep himself ahead, looking at the rear view mirror, or the rear wing of Tom Gordon. He's going to have to go defensive here potentially, with Vapid using a little bit of the battery. However, Vapid has absolutely no deployment to use. Is he going to send it down the inside? Nope, that's too far back even for Vapid to send it. Meanwhile, still close though. Tom Gordon used a little bit of the battery to keep himself ahead. 10 laps left in this Grand Prix, or 11 laps, depending which way you look at it. 10 laps, yeah, 10 laps left of this. Vapid meanwhile still keeping himself close to the back there of Tom Gordon, still just putting the pressure on. All the other gaps are pretty much around about a second, or just over a second, or about a second. So at the moment, not anyone else really within DRS. 5 seconds the gap near enough at the front now. Sora is just pulling away from the front. Shot Metal, obviously we know that he's on the same age of tyres on the mediums. However, he's not been able to do anything against Sora, who has been a dominant force once again in this race, with Angelo as well in third. He's managed to keep himself ahead. However, Tom Gordon is essentially going to have a say on that matter, but he's not going to be close enough once again to actually really do anything to the Ferrari driver. The Ferrari driver being very, very consistent in terms of keeping up his form at this moment in time. Obviously, we know he had a good race out in Mexico as well, I do believe. Vapid with no deployment, trying to send it down the inside. Yellow flag. I believe that is JDM who's lost ground there. As we have is that going to be a VSC? No, I'm not sure what's going on here. I think there's an issue here between Vapid and Tom. Has someone got to let someone through here? Did Vapid manage to make the move before the virtual safety car was called? I'm not entirely sure. Nope, it has indeed sorted itself out now. Or has it? Yep, no, I believe it has done. We're all good now. I believe that was JDM causing that incident at the final corner. I believe you'll probably be into the pits. Tom, you cannot... Oh, there we go. JDM has retired from the session, but it was indeed in the pit lane, so we will not see any action on that front. Tom Gordon, I'm not sure what was going on there between himself and the Williams of Vapid. Obviously, we know that it's still going to be good points for them against that. I do believe also he'll lose a few positions, probably down to about P6 with what's going on with his penalty. Scott just there as well in the back. Scott there is in his background as well. 1.5 seconds is watching brief, with Kirby just behind trying to see how close he can actually get to the back of Scott. Obviously we know Kirby's on 2 lap younger tyres than what Scott is himself. And Kirby trying to get himself as close as possible. Tom Gorin trying to hang in there as much as possible on the back of the Williams. However, the Williams now is having a look and trying to get as close as possible to Angelo. And that podium is under pressure. Going to be under pressure soon from Vapid, who does want it to try and see how close he can actually get to the back of the Ferrari in front. Obviously a Ferrari who's had a very boring race for the most part, apart from the first stint where he was just defending. Does not have to make any major mistakes though, but I don't think it is going to be all that long before Vapid does indeed catch up. As there's JDM exiting from the session. No wonder really, not a good race from the Ferrari driver, and once again it's going to be Angelo carrying that Ferrari team in terms of the points that you do get from this league. Been looking to get himself, he's within the range of what he requires. Meanwhile, I think Kirby is actually close to the back of Scott as well. Scott really struggling on those tyres. For some reason or another, he is not liking those and they are just not working with him. And back to Vapid versus Angelo. Vapid is going to try and get himself as close as possible on this DRS straight. Vapid once again, this is much like the first sector. As there goes now the McLaren driver picking up his first penalty of the race, a 3-second time penalty for the McLaren driver. Obviously I've seen at some point he did skirt over some of the track limits, so potentially he's had some issues in that section of things. As Vapid meanwhile is trying to get close as possible to the back of Angelo while this is all going on. And Vapid, he's on the quicker tyres at the moment, but at what point do those tyres start to fall off and Angelo starts to have the better tyres? Because those hard tyres will go longer. He just has to not make any mistakes and not keep that Williams behind, and he can reduce the grip and the front aero that Vapid does. Obviously sitting in the dirty air that long does not really help your tyres really. Meanwhile, looking back as well at P6, it's still Kirby versus Scott. Kirby trying to get as close as possible as we go into the last sector, and it's going to be close to see if he can actually do it. Meanwhile, Vapid is the closest he's been yet to the back of Angelo. Is he going to be able to do anything as we now head into the DRS zone this time? He's practically pushing the Ferrari through this time. He has enough of a gap. I think he's going to be close enough, and I do think that Angelo's going to have to go defensive here, using the ERS to try and keep himself ahead for as long as possible. Serpentining across the track, which you are allowed to do, still using the battery. Is Vapid going to send it down the inside? No, he's not. Vapid obviously was stuck behind Angelo for a lot of the first stint. Obviously when Vapid got Angelo got the good start in the Form 8 in the sprint race, I believe it was, and he spent a long time just looking at the rear of a Ferrari, and let's just say he's probably had enough of looking at said rear diffuser of Ferrari now, because he needs to really try and get past as soon as per possible. Tom Gorin meanwhile is still in this, just about in this in that 1.3 seconds back from Vapid, so he really could honestly keep himself in this mix if Vapid's tyres do fall off near the end of this race. Obviously knowing the mediums are going to have to travel a long way from when that safety car did indeed come out. Obviously Vapid had to pit onto those tyres from when he had the incident with Scott himself. He is back ahead though at this point, obviously with the advantage of the medium compound tyres. However, once again, great overhead camera shot there as you see Vapid once again getting as close as possible to the back of Angelo. Angelo's once again going to have to go defensive to try and keep himself ahead of the McLaren driver. Williams driver, I don't know why I said McLaren there. Really should know Carnahan's by now, as Angelo uses a little bit of the barrier to get himself as far away as possible. However, Vapid, he's got a lot of overspeed, however not much ERS deployment to really speak of that he can use to try and keep himself ahead. He's sitting now in the dark air, which is really costing him time now. And Tom, he's fell back though, still falling back at this moment in time, and I wonder if there's soon going to be maybe a battle between that, as Kirby is fell out of range as well. So this is really all the battle that's currently going on. TMS Sora meanwhile still leads at the front. It is Shut Metal and PT2. That gap has just got bigger from the start. That's sort of the safety car restart, and Angelo in third is holding position still, but he does have a fast Vapid behind him on medium compound tyres. The Williams driver still not able to make the move stick at the moment, with Angelo still holding station in third. On to third place, obviously we know that Vapid has a time penalty to potentially add on to race time afterwards, so that could potentially cost him. Scott just about hanging on still. As we know, Kirby does have one, so you'd only drop back down to about P6 for the time being, potentially before stewards' inquiries and appeals could potentially go in. As Vapid looking to try and get past this time. Once again he'll go defensive all the way pretty much over the line there. As Vapid once again, he's going to have to use the battery. He's not going to be close enough though. This is going to help Tom Gorian though, because Tom Gorian is going to be in a great position here, as Angelo is currently on not much more ERS deployment than what Vapid is. Good battle so far between these two. These two have been locked together for most of the race, or most of one of the races here or the other. Obviously with the sprint that happened earlier on as well. As he's still close, you can see how close he is. When you look back from the Ferrari of Angelo, you can see he's pushing as hard as he possibly can to keep himself ahead, and Vapid is trying his best to keep ahead there. It's a little bit of a clunking over the curbs there from Angelo, and I think it's maybe unsettled his car a little, but this is the closest that Vapid has been yet. However, he's not going to be able to do anything with this. However, look at the grip he's going to have coming out here. I wonder if Angelo will just let him have it up the inside here. Nope, he's not going to be close enough. Both lights will be flashing. Tom Gorian will be looking at this thinking, yes, I can take advantage of this here. Vapid is going to try. We're going to go look at this from Tom Gorian. Let's see how this all shapes up. Yeah, Alpine driver has box seats for this going on. Angelo is going to not have much more ERS deployment. There's nothing. He's using pretty much everything that he has. However, Vapid's down the inside. He's finally got his opportunity. He's gone down the inside. However, Angelo's still alongside. The Ferrari driver has the line for the next corner. However, the outside is going to be the more flowing line as we go into the next corner. Little bit of contact side pod to side pod there. Lucky no one spun there, as down the inside goes Vapid. However, side by side between the two drivers still. As here comes Vapid, he's grabbed the inside line for the next corner. Angelo has to back out in the move. However, this has helped Tom Gorian catch up massively. He's on much more deployment, the cars around him. And Scott is just falling away, as it looks like now finally Vapid has managed to get clear. And Angelo loses the podium with only 3 racing laps to go. Angelo, can he come back at the Williams driver? He's not really looking like he has the pace at the moment. It looks like he was just holding on. I wonder if that mistake on that final lap actually managed to was the climax there that Vapid was looking for to try and get himself past. He'd sat behind for a fair few laps. This is kind of what this track is about. You have to kind of pick and choose your moments over when you're going to go for a move. As there's Checo with a mistake now there. A 3-second time penalty. I believe that's 6 seconds for Checo now, who is currently in P9. Once again struggling for a little bit of pace. Meanwhile, Angelo is still keeping within range. Obviously he knows he can get that podium back potentially before penalty removals, if anything like that does go through. Tom Gorian meanwhile is still trying to see how close he can stay. Maybe get 4th place out of this race, or if he can challenge Angelo for that 4th place and maybe get that 3rd place himself after penalties, or deal with this race. As there's a yellow, I believe that is Checo. I wonder if Checo is I think he's only just spun. I don't think anything else has actually happened. No, he is absolutely fine. He's managed to get himself going, so the Aston Martin driver is absolutely fine and can carry on his journey. As Angelo meanwhile is still just about keeping touch. Lap 33 of 35, 2 racing laps to go for TMS Sora. Obviously TMS Sora he's got 8.7 seconds, and he has obviously just controlled this race, even with the VSCs and the safety car that did indeed come out. He has just been in control. Shot Meadow is not, obviously we know that Shot Meadow started a little bit further down. Wonder if maybe if he'd been a bit further up, he could have potentially been involved with that. And then obviously we have this battle here going on. I wonder, is Angelo gonna use all of the battery he can use to get himself as close as possible and try and make a move with the penultimate lap. Angelissimo trying to get himself in a position where he can make it. As Oshlix I think is into the pit lane for what will probably be for a set of soft compound tyres to go for fastest lap in the race. because obviously not really much going on for the McLaren driver. Indeed, it is soft compound tyres for the McLaren driver, as Angelo, even though he managed to get, I wonder how much of those tyres got used up for Vapid trying to get past. He sat behind for a very, very long time. Tom Gordon, meanwhile, still staying close as well. Angelo is still on course to want to get his podium back, and Scott, meanwhile, is also coming back into this as well. Having had a few issues with pace earlier on, a few laps ago, he's coming back into the fray once again himself, and he could drop Vapid all the way back to P6 from P3 at the moment. Potentially before penalties are a thing that are applied towards the end of the race. Angelo, meanwhile, still got Tom for company behind, and he's going to have to worry about that Alpine behind and try and get himself as close as possible. Does not opt to go narrow there. Tom Gordon, meanwhile, has got time ahead of Scott, but Scott has closed the gap a little, but has lost the time once again. Angelo, meanwhile, in the Ferrari, still within range, half a second or so of Vapid. He's in that dirty air range where he needs to be careful of dirty air, that you do not have issues with the car in front. Kicking up all the dirty air and basically passing that straight onto the car behind, and noting the fact of causing front end wash and tyre grip loss, which could potentially be a thing. Meanwhile, we're on to the final lap of the Grand Prix. We'll come back to this battle in just a second. Let's see where TMS Sora is. He's coming around to complete the final few corners. It's been once again a dominant victory for TMS Sora, finally showing what his pace was, obviously without the intricacy. Obviously we knew what happened in last week in Mexico with his spin, but it's going to be TMS Sora who comes around to win here in Hungary for what is his second race victory in a row. It is TMS Sora with the fastest lap of the Grand Prix at the end, a 1:18.7 on the line. It's going to be Shut Medal in P2. A good strategy call from him is going to see him come through in P2, but who's going to get P3? It is going to be P3 for Vapid. However, he's probably going to lose that with penalties against Angelo. Potentially he's going to probably drop all the way back to maybe potentially P6. He does indeed drop back to P6. Scott jumps in for P5. Kirby's going to come home in P7 with Checo in P8. The McLaren driver is going to come home in P9, and probably the guest star appearance. Not the best drive from him. Obviously we know what happened with him earlier on in the sprint race. We saw that he had the issues in the sprint race. Could have been interesting to see how he got on in the midfield if he'd had the chance of a proper race there for the McLaren driver. But it's going to be Checo comes home in P8, and it's going to be the McLaren driver coming home in P9, but does get fastest lap of the Grand Prix. P8 though, I think he had less penalties. I think he had one less penalty. Driver of the day is going to be Shut Medal, and I don't think I can disagree with that, because although it was a little bit of luck in the pit lane with when the safety car came out and when he could actually go for it, but yep, Shut Medal will get driver of the day. So it is TMS Sora who takes home the treble from this weekend. Pole position, the win from the sprint race and the win from the feature race as well. Alongside him, it was obviously Shut Medal, who did not have the best of qualifying and not the best of sprint races, and Angelo, who obviously before penalties and for appeals go in for the league, we'll obviously see if he keeps hold of that P3 or if Vapid will get that P3 back. We'll have to see. But congratulations to your top three finishers. So Sora is your race victor here in Hungary. Shut Medal is going to finish in P2 alongside him, and Angelo is going to take the final spot on the podium provisionally, with obviously time penalty for Vapid. Obviously P4 for Tom Gordon, with Scott in 5th. Vapid in 6th with that time penalty will drop him back to 6th. 7th for Kirby. Obviously we saw the spin at one point in that race, not the best result for him, with the McLaren driver in 8th, with Checo in 9th, and then the non-finishers from the race, it was JDM and the other Ferrari along with Fins and Senna, who obviously I believe Senna did not have the best of races either. So that is your rundown for the Grand Prix here in round number 17 here at RFL.
that was, let's just say there was some interesting moments in that race. Obviously not the most boring race I've probably ever seen for Hungary, which is some of the drivers obviously in the bit from second, Angelo, Scott, Tom Gorey and Vapid, Shot Medal, a few to name a few, obviously gave us some great battles that obviously went as we went through, but that is going to round off the podium here, the results and everything here for round number 17 in RFL. The next track I believe we have up in RFL is, let's have a look, I believe it is it's a reverse championship race. I'm not entirely sure though, I could entirely be wrong on that one. We have up next, looking at it, I think we have Canada up next. I believe it is the other reverse grid race. So Canada will be the next race up in RFL track, which should give us some great racing as well, obviously with the DRS zones. But until then, that is going to be all from here in RFL. We will see you for next week at the Gilles Villeneuve circuit by the St. Lawrence River in Canada.